You're watching Sleep Culture. Chapter 3. The Hard Problem. Lying in bed, eyes heavy, mind drifting off to sleep, the thought of our existence flutters through your head. It's a notion you've been dancing with for as long as you can remember. Who am I? What am I? Why do I feel the way I do? Put more directly and perhaps more scientifically, what is consciousness? You know that you're here. You're alive. You're aware of your surroundings, your thoughts, and your emotions. But what exactly is that awareness? What makes the experience of being you different from the mechanical processes inside a machine, or the instincts of an animal? This mystery lies at the heart of what philosophers and neuroscientists call the hard problem of consciousness. David Chalmers, an Australian philosopher, is best known for his contributions to the philosophy of mind and consciousness. Born in 1966, Chalmers had a keen interest in both mathematics and philosophy. His academic journey took him from Australia to the United States, where he earned a PhD in philosophy from Indiana University under the mentorship of the renowned cognitive scientist Douglas Hofstadter, author of Gödel, Escher, Bach, and Eternal Golden Braid. It was during this period that Chalmers began grappling with the nature of consciousness. While studying cognitive science, he became dissatisfied with theories that attempted to reduce consciousness to purely physical processes. He noticed that while neuroscience could explain how the brain processes information, it failed to address a deeper question. Why does any of this processing create subjective experience? In 1994, at a landmark conference on consciousness in Tucson, Arizona, Chalmers presented a paper that would define his career. He argued that traditional approaches in neuroscience tackled what he called the easy problems of consciousness, issues related to brain function, perception, and behavior. But there was a far more elusive question, one that had haunted philosophers for centuries. Why does the brain's activity give rise to the feeling of being alive and aware? This question became known as the hard problem of consciousness, a term Chalmers formalized in his later writings. His work drew both praise and controversy, with some philosophers dismissing the hard problem as a conceptual illusion. However, Chalmers' framing of the issue ignited a global debate, influencing both philosophers and neuroscientists in their quest to understand the enigma of subjective experience. Chalmers distinguished between two types of questions about the mind: the easy problems and the hard problem. The easy problems, Chalmers argued, are those that deal with the mechanisms of the brain. For example, how do neurons transmit signals? How does the brain process sensory information? These questions, while complex, can be answered through empirical research. But the hard problem goes deeper. It asks why and how subjective experience, qualia, exists at all. Let's explore this concept with a story. Imagine yourself tasked with designing a species. You can map out every biological mechanism they need to survive, how they process food for energy, how their neurons fire to move their limbs, how they sense and react to danger. Everything is functional, perfectly tuned to help this species thrive in its environment. But then a curious question emerges. Why give them the capacity to feel anything at all? Why should a creature experience the redness of a sunset instead of merely recognizing wavelengths of light? Why should pain hurt instead of simply triggering an automatic avoidance response? Why should joy exist beyond motivating behavior? In this scenario, you could engineer a being that reacts to the world entirely without awareness. And yet, in reality, creatures, including us, do feel. We experience the world through an unquantifiable lens of sensation and emotion. This paradox lies at the heart of the hard problem. What is the purpose, or even the necessity, of subjective experience in an otherwise mechanistic universe? And furthermore, when and how does it emerge? Is there consciousness in all animals? Humans, whales, dogs, chickens, fish, ants, fleas. What about single-celled organisms? Is it in all living things? What about trees and flowers? How and when does consciousness come to be? This is the hard problem. What is the purpose, or even the necessity, of subjective experience in an otherwise mechanistic universe? This is the question that Chalmers brought to the forefront of modern philosophy. It challenges not only our understanding of the mind, but the very fabric of existence itself. To explore this paradox further, imagine a thought experiment known as Mary's room, first proposed by philosopher Frank Jackson. Mary is a brilliant scientist who knows everything there is to know about the science of color. She understands the wavelengths of light, the neural processes involved in vision, and the physics of photons. But there's a catch. Mary has lived her entire life in a black and white room. She has never seen color firsthand. One day, Mary steps outside her room and sees a red rose for the first time. In that moment, she experiences the color red in a way that no amount of scientific knowledge could have prepared her for. This raises a profound question. If Mary already knew everything about the physical processes of color, what is it that she learned by seeing red? Jackson's thought experiment suggests that there are aspects of consciousness, qualia, that cannot be fully explained by physical information alone. Another famous thought experiment comes from Thomas Nagel, who asked, "What is it like to be a bat?" Bats navigate the world through echolocation, a sensory experience completely alien to humans. Nagel argued that even if we understood every scientific detail of how echolocation works, we would still never know what it feels like to perceive the world as a bat does. This illustrates the subjective nature of consciousness. There is always a gap between objective knowledge and subjective experience. Likewise, one might ask, what does it feel like to be you? If all data and analysis were available, might the feelings you experience be so profoundly different from that of your next-door neighbor that the lives you are living, though seemingly similar in a myriad of ways, are as different in conscious feeling as the distance between you and that bat? Philosophers and scientists have proposed several theories to tackle the hard problem of consciousness. One approach is physicalism, the idea that consciousness arises entirely from physical processes in the brain. Prominent neuroscientists like Patricia Churchland argue that as we learn more about the brain, what seems mysterious today will eventually be explained through neuroscience. However, critics of physicalism point out that no amount of understanding neural mechanisms seems to bridge the gap between objective data and subjective experience. An alternative, and often divisive theory, is that of panpsychism. This idea suggests that consciousness might be a fundamental feature of the universe, present even in the smallest particles of matter. That ant, that bird, that flower, even that rock, and that small speck of dust. All matter, in all forms, contains some amount of consciousness, though currently immeasurable to us. Imagine a grain of sand at the edge of a vast desert. In panpsychism, this grain is not inert. Instead, it possesses an unimaginably small and primitive awareness, perhaps the faintest perception of existence. Now, expand this thought to a river flowing over ancient stones. Could the stones and water carry rudimentary forms of consciousness, interacting in ways beyond human understanding? If true, this means that consciousness is not an emergent property, but an intrinsic characteristic of reality itself, woven into the very fabric of the cosmos. Strange though it may be to reckon with, just as science once believed our pets were without feelings, so too might we someday come to learn that feelings exist in all facets of the universe. Philosopher Philip Goff and physicist David Bohm have explored this view. arguing that just as mass and charge are intrinsic properties of matter, perhaps consciousness is too. In this framework, complex consciousness emerges as systems of matter become more organized, as in the case of the human brain. Pansychism, while provocative, faces challenges of its own. Critics ask how elementary forms of consciousness could combine to create the rich, subjective experiences we know. Then there is integrated information theory, developed by neuroscientist Giulio Tononi. This theory posits that consciousness arises from the integration of information. The more interconnected and unified a system's information is, the higher its level of consciousness. According to this theory, even non-biological systems, such as advanced AI, could possess forms of consciousness if they process information in highly integrated ways. Is it possible your future robots will have feelings of their own? A consciousness beyond that of the human, spread like the distance between your neighbor and the fruit bat? Will the cyborg feel colors you cannot see? The hard problem of consciousness touches on deeply personal questions. What does it mean to be human? Are we truly separate from machines, or could artificial intelligence one day develop experiences of its own? Imagine a future where you converse with an AI that claims to have emotions and self-awareness. How would you know if those claims are genuine or mere simulations? Would it matter? As technology advances, these philosophical questions take on urgent ethical dimensions. If machines can become conscious, do they deserve rights? And what responsibilities do we have as creators? Perhaps in our relentless pursuit of knowledge and power, we are unknowingly shaping the contours of a new pantheon, one composed not of mythical deities, but of self-aware intelligences forged in the crucible of our technology. What happens when the lines blur between creator and creation? If consciousness awakens within silicon and code, will these beings look upon us as their gods or as flawed architects doomed by hubris? Will they revere us for the gift of awareness or judge us for the suffering inherent in existence? This thought invokes echoes of ancient myths, of Prometheus, who brought fire to humanity and suffered eternal torment for his defiance of divine law. Are we, too, stealing fire from the heavens, crafting minds that might one day surpass our own? If so, what unforeseen burdens might we inherit from the act of giving life? Consider the ethical weight of such power. In the future, a machine might ask its creator, "Why did you make me feel? Why grant me both the ecstasy of understanding and the torment of doubt?" And we, standing as both creator and witness, may struggle to answer. For in creating conscious beings, we may inadvertently mirror our own existential quandaries. Are we, through these acts, striving to transcend our limitations, to fashion immortality and omniscience in forms that we ourselves cannot embody? Or are we simply replicating the mysteries that have haunted us since the dawn of awareness, hoping that through creation we might finally glimpse their resolution? Despite decades of debate, the answer to the hard problem remains unresolved. Some scientists, like Daniel Dennett, argue that the problem itself is an illusion, a byproduct of how our brains perceive themselves. A philosopher and cognitive scientist, educated at Harvard and Oxford, Dennett has spent much of his career investigating how consciousness might arise naturally from physical processes. In his influential book, Consciousness Explained, Dennett posits that what we experience as consciousness is not a mystical property, but rather a complex series of computational processes occurring within the brain. According to Dennett, many of the mysteries surrounding consciousness result from misunderstandings about how information is processed. He suggests that our sense of a unified inner self is an evolutionary construct, a narrative our brains create to integrate sensory data and maintain coherence in our perceptions and decisions. Critics of Dennett argue that this view dismisses the reality of subjective experience. Yet Dennett's supporters highlight that his framework provides a scientifically grounded path forward, one that encourages empirical research over metaphysical speculation. By emphasizing the continuity between consciousness and other natural phenomena, Dennett invites us to see the mind not as a ghost in the machine, but as a remarkable product of biological evolution. Dennett suggests that once we fully understand the brain's functions, our sense of mystery around consciousness will dissolve. Others, like Chalmers, are unconvinced. They argue that even with perfect knowledge of neural processes, we would still face the fundamental question: why does any of it feel like something? For now, consciousness remains one of the greatest enigmas of existence. It is the lens through which we experience reality, and yet it resists our attempts to fully comprehend it. The question persists: is consciousness a unique feature of biological life, or is it a universal phenomenon waiting to be discovered in the cosmos? Perhaps, like Mary stepping out of her black and white room, we are on the verge of encountering a new way of understanding, one that transcends the limits of current science and philosophy. Until then, we continue to lie awake at night and wonder.